Welcome to New Africa TV. Our presentation today is about the natural resources of Africa. Many countries in Africa have the largest reserves of natural resources, like diamonds, gold, oil, natural gas, uranium, platinum, copper, cobalt, iron, bauxite, and tanzanite. Approximately 30% of the Earth's remaining natural resources are in Africa. It's urged that 75% of all the world's diamonds come from Africa. The top diamond producers are Botswana, Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, Angola, Sierra Leone, South Africa, Namibia, and Tanzania. The top gold producers are South Africa, Ghana, Burkina Faso, Mali, Tanzania, Guinea, and many more. Oil is mainly produced in Nigeria, Angola, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Tanzania is the only country in the world that has tanzanite. Tanzanite is mined in the northern part of Tanzania.
Hello family, this is African Esquire and I'm here with a new video. So before I get started with this video and this subject, I do want to just do a quick announcement that I just start a separate channel called Finding Yeshua. You can find the link to that channel in this description box, as well as on my channel, African Esquire. There's a link to the new channel. The reason why I wanted to start a new channel is because I wanted to have a channel specifically where I could give voice to Christianity, in particular people who might understand that Christianity has been tampered with as far as doctrine, as far as how it's actually been executed. It's been done in many ways that is not Christian-like. So this is an opportunity to me as a woman, as a Black woman, an African woman, to give my perspective on the faith. Also try to learn new subjects about the faith. Some of the subjects I'll be covering are things that I didn't know previously, and some of them are things that I'm going to learn with the audience. But I did just want to create a separate channel for that, because I do think it's important, whether you're Christian or not, that there's so many things that are in the faith that have been infused with things that should not be in the faith, particularly things from colonialism, from slavery, things from capitalism. But when you look at the original faith of Christianity, it's totally contrary to these things that have been infused with Christianity. So I wanted to have a channel where we're going to explore what are the things that have been taught to us, how do we get around that, and how do we appreciate it for what it is. So that is a separate channel. It's a new journey I'm going to go on. I plan on probably posting a video once a week on Sundays, so just watch out for that. This video, we're going to talk about a previous video that I did, kind of a follow-up, but more so directed towards the diaspora. So I did a video earlier this week. The subject of the video is Africa is poor because Europe is rich. Now, in that video, I broke down the causal relationship between Africa and Europe, being that Europe has continued to exploit Africa. Colonialism really did not end. It ended as far as a formal system. However, it went underground, and now we have neo-colonialism, which is a lot like colonialism, except for instead of seeing a white face doing the exploiting, you'll see a black face doing the exploiting and a white face behind that black face that stays hidden that is actually benefiting the most. So because of that, the West has been becoming richer and richer and richer, and Africa poorer and poorer and poorer, despite the fact that Africa as a continent is actually rich. It's actually the richest continent. And this is an issue that has been continuing to exist really since colonialism started. Now, I want to talk about this today in the context of the diaspora. And in particular, for people who are descendants of enslaved Africans, or some of you might identify yourselves as American descendants of slavery, ADOS. Now, I'm not going to have another video at this time where I'm going to talk about the movement ADOS inside of a critical matter. What I mean by that is I try not to talk about the same thing every single video. I try to actually, once I feel like I've addressed something, I try to move on. Previously, I felt like I addressed the movement, and that's not to say that I'm not going to address the movement again, but it's to say that I'm satisfied with the previous with the previous dialogue that we've had in regard to my criticisms of the ADOS movement and its leaders, notably Tone Talks and Yvette Carnell. Now, what I do want to talk about, though, in relation to the diaspora is the opportunity that is missed because a lot of us focus our mind and our effort towards getting something from this country, and I'm talking about the United States, instead of getting something from the place where you actually are from. What I mean by that is, I spoke inside of the video, Africa is poor because Europe is rich, that if you are of African descent, Africa is also your home. You have a right to Africa. You have the same right that even people who are on the continent have, particularly when you've been taken from Africa. It was not your choice to leave. It was not your choice to be taken on a slave ship and taken on the other side of the world where you have no land, where you have no inheritance, where you have nothing to call your own. That was not a choice. We were taken as prisoners of war. The war was capitalism on the African continent, and we were taken as a collateral thing that was going to be used to advance Western capitalistic interests. So understand that your ancestors, your ancestors' children, their children, they did not willingly come here. And because they did not willingly come here, we also have a claim. So when the Federation of African Liberation, the organization I'm a part of, says that our call is for Africans throughout the world in the diaspora to reclaim, retake, and redistribute African resources for Africans, African riches for Africans, African riches and wealth for Africans. That does not exclude you. That actually includes you. So the issue is, when we're so focused on what's going on here, we're not focused on the bigger picture. And I would say it's a bigger picture simply because there's a lot more wealth to be gotten in Africa than to be gotten in America. There's a lot more opportunity to be gotten in Africa than in America. And you might say, how do you know that there's more opportunity? Because there's a reason why everyone else is running to Africa, although you have Africans running away from Africa. You have China running to Africa. You have the Europeans running to Africa. You have every single government, the Arabs, every single person trying to get their peace, trying to get some of these riches, trying to get some of this wealth. And the reason is, again, because Africa, as some people, and I've said it in previous videos, some people have called it the last frontier, meaning that is the last place. Although a lot of the resources have been tapped previously, that's the last place where you have resources that really are untapped. And a lot of people are running there because that's their last place that they could try to suck dry. Because in capitalism, the only goal is to suck something dry and then, move on to the next. There really is no next after Africa. So the question would be, once, if Africa is sucked dry by the West, what are they going to do at that point? And that's a whole question of political theory, but we're not going to go there. So we're going to focus on the diaspora's claim to Africa. Now, I want to note before I get into this that it's very interesting that when it comes to movements and how things are going. And what I mean is that when you've seen previously, like last year, a lot of people were talking about going back to Africa. It was called this year is supposed to be the year of return. And I just want you to soak that in. This is supposed to be the year of return, meaning that Africans throughout the diaspora, whether you're in the Caribbean and the Latin American countries, whether you're in the US, this is supposed to be the year that we come back to Africa, if not for finality, then to visit, because Africa is supposed to be welcoming their arms to us this year. We have, a lot of ceremonies going on in different parts of the continent. For example, Ghana. I know a sister who has the organization Kinshi Initiative that's trying to push a year of return celebration inside of Tanzania. So there are different African countries that are welcoming Blacks back, right? This year of all years, why is it that this year of all years has been this mass movement to distance us from Africa? And think about it. I mean, I've never seen so much like xenophobia from African people more than I have this year. I've never seen as much anti-African rhetoric on the internet or whatever. I've never seen so much as this year. So I, as someone who has actually read and looked at my history, I don't take these things lightly. I don't take them as coincidences. So I don't take and the ADOS movement really didn't start this year. I know Yvette was pushing this previously, but it popped off this year, and I don't take it as a coincidence that this movement to distance African people from their African roots started this year of all years. I don't take it as a coincidence. As I said in other videos, you had so many African Americans, Africans in different parts of the world embracing their African identity. And you had all of this coming from really the Black Panther movie. But a lot of people actually felt like some type of pride in being African. And right after this, we have a shift in the other direction. These are things that we should not take coincidentally. And take that for what you want to. Am I saying that there's a conspiracy from, the white man to distance us? Well, there would be every reason to. And the reason is because if you think about it, if Africans in America, and, when I say this, I'm not saying drop everything that's going on in America and only focus on Africa. We have to learn that we can kind of walk and chew gum at the same time, meaning you could ask for justice. You can ask to destroy the prison industrial complex. You can ask for reparations, or I don't even want to say ask. I would say fight for reparations. You can fight to end the prison industrial complex. You can fight for all of these things on your home front and fight for it in your homeland, your original homeland. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. There's no, we have to focus on this right now. So you're so busy that you have to focus on one thing at a time, because if that's your strategy, then understand you've already lost. The reason why Europeans were able to conquer the world is because they know how to not focus on one thing at one time. Look at the different wars that have gone on. Look at how they've been able to balance interest in multiple parts of the world. Think about what's going on right now. You have Trump talking about Venezuela, that you also have him fighting with China, but you also have him trying to get some stuff over here and over here and over here. You have so much things going on at one time. So when I hear people say, well, we're not saying that we don't want to be African, but we're just saying we're going to take care of home first. Well, sweetie, walk and chew gum at the same time, because if you do claim that you do have a right to the riches of Africa, but you also claim that you have a right to reparations in America, then why not do both? Are you so one-sided? Don't tell me that you're on Twitter all day and you can only tweet, one thing. Like, if you're so one-sided in your approach, then understand it's so easy to take you out. And I'm just saying this based off of history. Don't forget, your feelings. Just read. It's been easy to take out movements in the past because they have not been multilateral. They have not attacked at different fronts. And if we want to have the maximum capacity when it comes to actually being effective, we have to learn to do multiple things at a time. So why would there be such an incentive to distance Africans in the U.S. and Africans, or I'll say descendants of enslaved Africans from Africans who are actually on the continent? Why is there such a interest in the West in actually doing this? And that is because of the same reasons that have always existed. So when you look back in slavery, for example, a lot of people don't tell y'all this because y'all don't, go out and get your own independent sources. But the blacks who were brought to America, they didn't just come here and forget Africa. They didn't just come here and say, oh, well, we're here. Let's take care of this. Let's take advantage of this American good soil. A lot of them were actually looking back to Africa. A lot of them actually wanted to go home, obviously. A lot of them cherished their culture and tried every single way to maintain their culture. But even as time progressed and their descendants came up, a lot of them were looking to Africa, especially in the Caribbean, to try to find a way to prevent white occupation of Africa. And a lot of these movements have been thwarted. Actually, all the movements have been thwarted. And the reason is because if you think about it, if you have all of us, not just, some of us, but all of us from multiple parts where we are. So you have the countries that are in Africa, you have the Caribbean, you have Europe, you have America, you have all of these places in Latin America. You have all of us together saying that to the West and to all other colonial powers that you need to let Africa go, that you need to stop exploiting, that you need to stop taking advantage of the resources there. If we're all collectively doing that, that is a threat to white supremacy. One, because all of us have our own citizenship wherever we reside. So, for example, it's easy for people to ignore neo-colonial movements whenever it has nothing to do with people who are actually in America. But when you have people who are actually American citizens saying that we want Africa to be free so that we can go back to our homeland and not have to go there begging, but actually go there and take part inside of the liberation movements that seek to regain Africa. Well, we are making those demands from the standpoint as being citizens and actually being able to speak directly to the powers and actually being constituents of the powers. That's way more effective than having someone who won't be heard inside of this theater, won't be heard here, saying the same thing. And it's the same thing wherever you are. So if you're in the UK and you're a UK citizen and you are telling your government you need to let Africa go, we need to have our resources back. If you're telling your government these things, it's the same exact effect. It's way more effective, and it's actually a fighting chance at actually ending the system. But understand that if the system ends and Europe stops exploiting Africa, that would be directly against their interest, because the reason why Europe and America are so rich is because they continue this relationship. So I'm going to read from an article. This is on it's a group called the Honest Accounts. They published a report in 2017. It's called How the World Profits from Africa's Wealth. And I want to talk about this in the essence of opportunity. So us who are throughout the diaspora, who aren't looking at Africa as more than what we have where we are. This is the things that we should be understanding, and these are the things that we should be reading that actually show that reality. So the article goes, Africa is not poor. While many people in African countries live in poverty, the continent has considerable wealth. A key problem is that the rest of the world, particularly Western countries, are extracting far more than they send back. Meanwhile, they are pushing economic models that fuel poverty, inequality, often in alliance with African elites. Africa is generating large amounts of wealth, and in some ways is booming. For example, the largest 500 African companies recorded a combined turnover of $698 billion in 2017. In 2015, countries in Africa exported $232 billion worth of minerals and oil to the rest of the world. Now, as I'm going through these, I want you to think about what you have in America versus what you are and wherever you are versus what you actually are entitled to by way of your African lineage. In America, I personally don't know of any of us who are entitled to 232 billion worth of minerals and oil collectively as a community. Like, if you take every single black person and look at what we have here, look at what we're promised here, even if, let's say, we get what's owed to us. I don't know any of us who can generate 232 billion worth of minerals per year. So think about these things. Think about, what opportunity you're going towards versus that the opportunity that you're missing out on by way of completely denying your African heritage. So I'm going to go on. The value of mineral reserves in ground is, of course, even larger. South Africa's potential mineral is estimated to be around, get this, 2.5 trillion, while the untapped mineral reserves of the Democratic Republic of the Congo are estimated to be worth, listen to this, $24 trillion. This is not all of Africa. This is just the Congo. Just the Congo, $24 trillion. That is enough to feed every continent on the continent and in the diaspora. Think about this. These are the things that you're distancing yourself from. These are the things you're saying that you don't want any part in. While you're saying, "Oh, I want to be here. I want to be here. Oh, I'm waving my American flag." These are the things that they don't want you to know, that you're entitled to way more than what you're getting here. I'm trying to get y'all to understand this. Now, these are very large numbers, but various reasons explain why the majority of people in Africa do not benefit from them and why the present mode of mineral extraction actually leads to impoverishment. These include foreign companies taking most of the profits generated by Africa's natural wealth. When multilateral companies export commodities such as minerals from Africa, their governments often benefit only marginally, receiving very little tax revenue from these companies. In key sectors such as mining and oil and gas companies, they tend to pay lower taxes and are given tax incentives that reduce them still further. Companies are anyway easily able to avoid paying taxes that are due because of their use of tax planning through tax havens. Many African tax policies are the result of long-standing policies of Western governments insisting on Africa lowering taxes to attract investment. Money is leaving Africa, partly because Africa's wealth of natural resources is simply owned and exploited by private corporations, private foreign corporations. And I want to say this again. This is our inheritance. This is something that we're entitled to. And we're standing by while these outsiders go to our homeland and take control over foreign private corporations. And by the way, this isn't just to people who are descendants of slaves. These are to Africans, period, because a lot of us, and I know this, because I know it, unfortunately, a lot of Africans do leave the continent and don't necessarily try to do something to free the continent once they're out. Even when they go and get citizenship in different places, you become integrated into the system that you're in, and you're more focused on benefiting from these countries that you're in than actually going back and doing something to free your country. So this is not just a condemnation of people who are saying they're ADOS. This is a condemnation of any African throughout the diaspora, throughout the world, whatever, on the continent, who's not waking up to the fact that you are sitting on a wealth reserve. You are sitting on gold right now, and you're so focused on living something else. You're so focused on being in the West. You're so focused on being somewhere else, or getting somewhere else, getting something the wrong way, that you're not woke up to the fact that if you try to actually control what's yours, you would have way more to profit from than what you get from these outsiders. So moving on. Only a minority of foreign investments do African governments have shareholding. Even if they do, this tends to be small, usually 5 to 20%. So these people coming into Africa, taking their money, and don't even give the governments a share. They might give them 5 to 20% a share, although they're taking trillions of money out of Africa. Think about that. A recent report from War on Want found that 101 companies listed on the London Stock Exchange control and identified a 105 trillion worth of resources in Africa in just 5 commodities: oil, gold, diamonds, coal, and platinum. These 101 companies have mineral operations in 37 African countries that are mainly British, with 59 incorporated in the US. In the UK. So I'm just saying this to say that we have to understand that all these things that we think that we're doing that are progressive, a lot of times there's an agenda behind it. A lot of times you won't see the person who has the agenda, or you don't see the person who's benefiting. But I would dare say that anytime that Western capitalism stands to benefit from a person who is black, I don't care if they're a Republican, someone like Ben Carson, I don't care if they say they're liberal, I don't care who they are. Anytime they stand to benefit, you should be questioning who could be behind that person, who could be behind that movement. And in particular, for my people throughout the world, let's understand that we have a claim to something so much bigger than what we're getting wherever we go to the West or we live in the West. We have a claim to something so much bigger, and our children have a claim to that. So when we're thinking about, what our interests are, what they truly are, is our interest inside of economies that are actually depleting. For example, if you know anything about the United States economy, you know that it's actually not what it used to be, and that a lot of people are predicting that the economy will crash soon within the next couple of years. So is that what you want to put your mind on? Is that where you want to put your heart on? And this isn't, listen, if this isn't one of those things where I'm like begging people, oh, join the Pan-Africanist movement, please. Because honestly, if you don't, you don't. You know, Marcus Garvey said it, like, not everyone's going to want to go back to Africa. Some of us have been so conditioned to think that where we are is better, the same way that our ancestors, some of our ancestors were so conditioned to think that life was better on the plantation than going off the plantation. A lot of us have a similar mentality. This is the only land we've known. This is the land where we think is so precious, you know, as far as what we've been taught in school. This is the flag we've been taught to salute to. So we are like, what? America? Leave America? What? Like, it's the same exact thing. And, you know, you might not like to hear that, but it is the same thing. Because if I'm telling you that there are trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars that you would have an entitlement to if you just have to fight for it. But rather than fight, you say, well, no, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to get what they are willing to give me. You know, that it's the same mentality. So this is not, again, for me begging people to join the fight. This is me saying, I hope you understand and that you're knowledgeable of what different agendas are happening and what you could be missing out on. And hopefully your eyes will be open to that. But if they're not, and if you still want to deny Africa, if you still want to treat Africa like it's something that is not worthy of you, if you still want to look down on Africa, then, you know, as you know, the Titanic captain did, you should sink with your ship. You know, even Dr. King said, you know, y'all are fighting to integrate into a burning building. So enjoy. But to my people who want more information on what's going on in Africa or what we can do to actually change Africa, the Federation of African Liberation, as I said, we are a Pan-Africanist organization that is calling that Africans reclaim, retake, and redistribute Africa's riches for Africans. So I would say that that is a much better deal than anything that you're promised here. That's just my opinion, though. But anyways, I love to see y'all's opinion. I will see you all in another video.